Now we're going to move down the side of this particular section of the display. And I've had these snowflakes here that we're looking at in years past, but I've again had them in more of a random type format. And this year I have put them in 2 lines of 4 snowflakes each. Again, I'm finding I don't particularly care for the random effect very much anymore. I like what you can do with those straight line patterns. So we'll see what these snowflakes look like. I also just recently reworked them in terms of the lights that have been on them. They used to have rope lights on them, had problems with some of the sections of rope lights burning out, so I stripped off all the rope lights and then replaced them all with blue LED, just regular lights on them. So we'll see what that looks like this year, and should give us a pretty cool looking snowflake, I'm hoping. As we continue to go along here, you can see here in the background there's also 8 RGB floodlights as well on this side of the yard to give the side of the house here a nice color wash. There is one of them, as well as one of the outdoor speakers that I have here. So as we just kind of pan down, there's another floodlight. There's a little prop, a little house prop that we have, another floodlight. We've got a Santa, there's a star. We have another one of the candy cane spinners right there. And we have this pot on the side of the house that has lights on it. Here we have 2 more controller bins. Each of these bins here, I won't open these up, the same thing. Each of these bins has 2 16-channel controllers in it, as well as one of them has a CMB24D that runs the floodlights on the side of the house. And having the 2 bins here was actually really nice, because one of the bins is for the regular network, and then the other bin is the start of the aux-A network, the secondary network that I have. Here I've got some little snowmen, 3 little snowmen here in a line. Again, it gives you that nice motion feature if you pro-sequence that correctly, where you can zip down and make the snowmen look like they're coming down this little bit of a hill here. Here is another tree trunk that I have wrapped with lights. Again, these are 8 channels that I've split this into. In this case, I've got red LEDs. At the base of that is another bin. In this case, this bin has a CMB24D to do the second set of arches here, leaping arches, as well as a 16-channel controller for this tree trunk and the set of snowflakes that we looked at earlier. We just have some other props. We've got a couple of little polar bears, a couple of little owls, some presents, boxes there. We've got a little pine tree here in the back we've got some lights in, as well as candy cane spinner number 4. And then we have 2 small pine trees here that have lights in them as well. This is Minnesota, so we thought this was very appropriate to have a blow-up shivering snowman with a sign that says "Burr," because it does get cold here. We're now moving into the start of the backyard, next section of the display. Again, this is just another tree trunk that I have wrapped with lights. It has 8 channels on it like all the other ones. And again, as I pan up this, you can kind of see a little bit of the pipe that I created with my spacers on it to help me wrap this tree. See some of the power cords there. There we go. Can't tell you how handy it is to have this. So rather than trying to go around and around and around, I can just go back and forth and hook on those pegs and wrap the lights. Because again, this is a 10-foot tall pole, so it gets up there a little ways, and trying to get this up on the top here is challenging enough as it is. At the base of that is, of course, another one of our controller bins. This has 2 controllers in it. 16 channels each. One of them is tasked to this tree trunk, and I think has half a controller that's empty. And the other controller runs the second set of mini trees, and this is the bigger set of mini trees. In this case, I have 16 mini trees. Again, this used to be randomized, but I have this year decided to put them in a row. So I have 2 rows of 8 mini trees. Now these particular trees are all using variants of white bulbs. And again, I don't need to put a whole ton of lights on these mini trees. I can just use typically 1 strand or 2 strands depending. So here is the 4th speaker that we have, and as you can see, it's basically placed right here at the end of this section of mini trees. So here we see those presents that we saw before, along with another one of our outdoor speakers and those 2 little pine trees we looked at earlier. And then we have the last of the candy cane spinners here, as well as more RGB floodlights for the back side of the house, as well as these are some just decorative pots we have that I threw some net lights on, as well as, yes, that is my air conditioner, and I threw a net light over the air conditioner as well. Again, here's just another little tree that we've been growing in the yard. This tree I used to have wrapped with multicolor lights. I don't think that looks the best, so this year I have wrapped this with just white lights, and we'll see what this looks like this year. This is another little prop I've got, this little train set here. This is just off and on. This is probably one of the biggest showpieces here is the deck. Has a lot of lights on the deck, and we'll start here with the deck having these 2 supports. Again, this is the left support, I guess you would say. Again, this is 8 channels. We'll take a look at the back side of this here in a second. Wrapped the same way as everything else, and then it has on the right support as well is wrapped with 8 channels. And you want to talk very cool spiral effects. This spiral staircase is one. I have actually got 8 channels of icicle lights running on the outside of that, and then 8 channels on this center support beam here, and then on the top rail as well is 8 channels of multicolor lights. So a lot of different lights on just the stairs here for the deck. The posts for the deck railing are wrapped. This is just 1 channel per post here, so this is not split into multi-channels, but I have 7 deck posts that are wrapped this way. We'll take a look at that. And then as well, I have some other different props. This is one of the double bells that I've got up here. And then here's a set of the single bells. And again, I've got 2 of the single bells, and I can actually make the bells look like they're ringing. And then the top of the deck rail is wrapped with multicolor lights, and I have 8 channels of deck rail here as that comes across the top of the deck there. Also have a set of strobe lights you can see, and then there is a net light that runs all over the front of the deck rail here. On the underside front edge of the deck here is a set of rain lights, icicle rain lights. So those extend along, and then also a set of strobe lights are on this underside as well. And those exist not only on the front, but also the underside of the deck. So here is the back of one of the support posts for the deck. And again, you can see that I've built these wooden supports here. Same kind of theory with them. Why bother wrapping the back side of this? Nobody's ever going to see it, so why waste the lights? So I have 8 different little boards set up here with, again, evenly mounted screws that I just wrap the lights in a back and forth type motion and go up, and then I can establish each one of my 8 channels. So here are 2 more of our bins with controllers in them. One of the bins has 3 16-channel controllers that take care of the spiral staircase as well as the last candy cane spinner, and the other bin has a CMB24D controller that drives the RGB floodlights that give us our color wash on the back side of the house. Here is the underside of the deck, where I have 4 of the 10-watt RGB floodlights. This underside of the deck here would tend to get pretty dark until I added these into the display. So I just kind of space them out relatively evenly, and they'll provide some nice color wash underneath the deck here. And then here I have 2 of the floodlights for the back. They're just mounted on 5-gallon buckets that I've turned upside down and mostly painted black. Some of the paint's come off. It's really kind of nice on these because I can take any extra cord that I have running out to these and just kind of shove it underneath the bucket, which keeps it out of the weather. And you can kind of see that here on this one, where I just got that disappearing under there. I wanted to try to get a little closer look here at these brackets that I made for the spiral staircase. A similar kind of concept where it's just a piece of wood that I have 8 screws evenly spaced, and then I zip tie the bracket to the framework of the spiral staircase and then hang my icicle lights off of each of these screws. And it's a really quick and easy way to make sure that my spacing is consistent and even when I put up these lights on this particular part of the prop. Here's a good view of the bracket that I made for the center post. Same kind of concept where these are measured so that I have 8 of these. Now, similar kind of bracket that I created for the rail on the spiral staircase here. In this case, it's a little bit harder to see. This is PVC pipe that I then put the little pegs into, and then on the back side made a cut about 3/4 of the way through the pipe so that the pipe would actually bend as this railing bends and not actually break. One tip that I wish I would have done is I used about 1.25" drywall screws. Probably should have used at least 2-inch. The extra length would be very handy sometimes as I come back and forth across the same section of hanger to make sure I use all the wire in the string. And sometimes that 1.5" peg there just isn't quite long enough and can get a little bit crowded with wire. So this is the top of the deck, looking at the back side of it. Again, you can see here that I've created this little bracket. This is a single bracket for wrapping the posts. Again, because I don't have channels on the post, each post is its own single channel. But again, similar kind of construction where I've got the pegs and then just wrap the lights back and forth and don't bother wrapping all the way around. And then I also have similar kind of brackets here for the rail. You can see it makes wrapping these rails a quick and easy job. Here we can see the back side of one of the double bells that I have. I have another set of bells here. You can see them there. You can see a little bit of the net lighting. One of the sets of double bells. Another set of single bells. And another set of double bells. Here we have another bin with 3 16-channel controllers in it. This handles all of the roof line as well as everything up here on the deck. It's actually plugged into a separate 15-amp circuit. This is actually not on the timer. It's a separate circuit, but because there's no inflatables or anything like that with this then these controllers can stay on throughout the whole show season. Now, coming out of this, you can also see the wiring that runs up to the roof line here, as well as some of the icicle lights on the roof line. So again, these run throughout the entire roof line. The final props in the backyard are these 3 10-foot tall spiral trees that we have, and I've got them arranged. One's up front a little bit, and then these other 2 are more back behind it. These are 8 channels per spiral tree, only spiral in one direction. Again, if you want to see the assembly and construction, how these are put up, I encourage you to look at our time-lapse video that shows how these go together. They take down and store rather nicely. Of course, here is the bin that has the controllers for the spiral trees. This has 2 16-channel controllers in it, so I have half a controller that is still empty I can use for other things. So we're now moving into the 4th section of the display, what I typically call the light garden, and this is looking at it from the back side. And I call it the light garden because I basically took these light strands and strung them around this little garden area that we have. So there's 4 strands that go around the garden like this, and then there's 2 strands, one at the top of the garden and one at the bottom of the garden, that go in the middle of the garden, and then there's some other props here in this garden area as well. One of these other props are these 2 birch trees that have lights wrapped on them. Can I go up different angles here? And again, you can see the same kind of bracketing system I use on these, where I have this pipe with the pegs in it and then just wrap the lights back and forth. At the base of this, of course, is again one of our controller boxes. In this case, it has a 16-channel controller in it that handles these 2 birch trees. Welcoming people into the display, we have this snowman here, LEDs. He just stays on all the time. It didn't really look very nice to have him blinking off and on, so just as a welcoming gesture, he just stays on. We continue walking along the light garden here, and here we have the other 2 Marty fans. This is one of them here, and then we have the other one here. Again, 8 channels per Marty fan. Now, new this year are these snowflakes that I have suspended above the light garden. These used to be more down level inside the light garden, and they tended to get lost. So this year I strung some cable between the trees and elevated these snowflakes up here, along with a couple of shooting stars that I have. And there's one of the shooting stars right there. So hopefully this will give these elements a little bit more visibility. There are 8 snowflakes, so again, more in a line versus a random effect, along with the 2 shooting stars. We can continue to come around the backside of the display here. We have another one of our blow-ups, cute little one my wife found, polar bear here with some penguin friends on the backside of them. Here we have one of the new features this year, is again just another one of these tree trunks that has been wrapped in lights. Again, this is a 10-foot tall section here that's been lit up, 8 channels in this section. And then we have the final elements in the display here. Is we have our Tune 2 sign, so everybody can know what radio frequency to use. As well as we took some old rope light that we had and wrapped it around our street sign. So that's all lit up. And then we have these pine trees back here that have 4 channels of lights in them, just some small multicolored lights, along with a few strobe lights. Well, I hope you enjoyed the behind-the-scenes tour of our 2019 Holiday Light Show. I encourage you to check out all of our videos on our YouTube channel, 8400 Lights. Have a wonderful holiday season, everyone. Thanks and bye-bye.